Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. So today we have a pretty interesting build. We have a build that naturally wants to run Yellow Jacket, and this build is from a user named Ari, and they have been working and tweaking on this build for several seasons now, and it's always kind of included the same core of your destroyer, your armor package, but the rest of it has evolved very, very drastically. And so looking at this list, this is not a standard destroyer list. And there's some really, really unique and really good interactions within this list that work very well for the destroyer package. Whether that be Yellow Jacket into an Adam Warlock on 2, that way you can sneak in an early trigger, you can try to defend it the next turn, or maybe you draw into your key resources and you can play away from that location. Or if it is a Calling Wing to discard your Swarm, that way on the very last turn when you drop Destroyer, you have an additional 6 power that you can push on the board as well. You have your Spider-Man that can lock down a lane either into turn 6 or into turn 5, so you can reliably drop your Professor X. Just a lot of good utility in this list. So let's run through the entire thing really quickly. First up, we have Yellow Jacket. Yellow Jacket is a card that I have never put in a deck. Ever. Because Yellow Jacket on reveal, afflict your other cards at this location with -1 power. To take up a card slot and only have 2 power, but you're impacting the other cards with a -1, felt really, really difficult to use. However, in this list, you can use this as a way to trigger your Adam Warlock, as a way to push power into a lane to help a Professor X. Maybe you push this along with a discarded Swarm and a Professor X into a lane all on turn 5, to give it a better chance of being able to lock down that lane and not have that question of, do I have enough power push with only 3 power? This offers quite a bit of flexibility. You don't want to use this, of course, in a full lane, but more often than not, in most of these games, I do want to actually drop Yellow Jacket. He doesn't feel like a dead draw. As long as we have Adam Warlock to help push some additional cards in our hand, he never feels like he is a waste of space. And then we have Hawkeye. Hawkeye is one that you don't run very often. However, this is a good one to play onto the board on 1. You can then drop Adam Warlock into that same lane on 2. That way he gets the 3 power. It's a little bit harder to counteract the Adam Warlock. Or maybe you use this on turn 4 and then you follow it up with a Professor X on 5 and then maybe some additional other cards. That way you get the Hawkeye trigger. It's just a way to cheaply push a little bit of extra power in that lane to give you that little bit more consistency of making sure that your lane lockdowns or your win conditions are met in this list. And then we have Sunspot. Sunspot is going to be another trigger for Adam Warlock, or a great card to drop behind a Professor X or an armored lane. This will let it be protected. If we end up skipping a turn or skipping 2 turns, he will be able to absorb that upside and help us swing that location, that very specific location, in our favor. And then we have Adam Warlock. You guys know that I am a really big Adam Warlock fan. Not everyone is, but in this list, I think we have a low enough curve that we have a lot of good resources to help guarantee that if we do draw into Adam Warlock, that we can make sure that he triggers, we can at least draw 1 or 2 additional cards from his ability, which increases the consistency that we draw into our Professor X, our Spider-Man, our Destroyer, those really big win conditions for our list drastically. And then we have Psylocke. Psylocke is going to help us ramp into either an early Professor X or an early Destroyer, and sometimes we may just want to drop this in the Oscorp tower lane to send them a really low power card, and we get a little bit of upside from it. And then we have Armor. Armor is going to be one of the ways that we protect our lanes from the Destroyer. Armor is going to be a pretty cheap drop. It will help protect our Sunspot, protect our Adam Warlock, protect our key resources so that we can guarantee that we keep those even after dropping a Destroyer onto the board. And then we have Swarm. Swarm is one that as soon as I saw it in this list, I was like, that's brilliant. As long as you can trigger that Swarm's ability in having that card discarded, all of a sudden you have 2 Swarms, 2 3 power cards that cost 0 that you can drop alongside your Destroyer. So you can drop Destroyer first, and then you can drop your 2 Swarms onto the board. And this really helps extend that power push on that last turn play, so that even if maybe it's not quite favorable, we can push that little bit of extra power in the lane to make sure that we win it. And then we have Calling Wing. Calling Wing is going to discard the lowest cost card from our hand. With this list, we can usually play our low cost cards relatively easily because we don't start playing our big cost cards until turns 4, 5, and 6. And so we can push the rest of the cards onto the board, we can make sure that Calling Wing triggers the swarm, and then that is going to give us our free swarms in return. And then we have the Green Goblin. Green Goblin is kind of a tech slot. You can use something like Debris. I know that Ari has tested out a lot of different cards in this list, and Green Goblin performs fairly well. Debris performs fairly well. You can kind of switch up what you play in this slot, but overall, I like either a Debris or a Green Goblin to add some disruption to the opponent's board. And with the Green Goblin, it's going to be 3 costs. It's going to clog up their board a little bit. And then we can push either a lower amount of power in that lane, or we can utilize this to do a big power push in another lane while still trying to drop maybe just our swarms into the lane where we had dropped the Green Goblin to see if we can win that one in the process. And then we have Spider-Man. Spider-Man is going to be great in this list. He's going to be great to drop on turn 4 as a way to segue into your turn 5 Professor X. He's going to be great to drop on turn 5 as a way to guarantee maybe that locks in a win for you in one of those lanes, and then you can win one of the other ones with your Destroyer drop on turn 6. A lot of really good utility with Spider-Man in this list. And then we have Professor X. Professor X is going to guarantee that we win a lane. By ramping into him, by locking into him, by having a big power push with our swarms, our yellow jackets into an uncontested lane, Professor X is going to guarantee we win that lane, allowing us to much more easily lock down one of the other ones for our win condition. And then finally, we have Destroyer. Destroyer is going to be one of the highest 6 cost cards that you can have, but he has the downside of on reveal, he will destroy your other cards, unless they are protected by something like an armor or a Professor X. And this list runs both of those, and so a lot of times we can protect both lanes. Or we can drop Destroyer into the armored lane after winning a Professor X lane to make sure that we guarantee the win in that scenario. But that is the rundown of the deck list. I am going to go ahead and jump into a few games. I hope you guys enjoy. Alright, so first up we have Philiandre, and we discard our Psylocke. They discard their Miles Morales. So I think they lost a little bit more than we did. Let's go with a Hawkeye into Sokovia. Sometimes we like to play it into the unknown location, but I don't want to risk it being an Oscorp tower. And so let's go with our Hawkeye. Next turn we can do an armor, and then depending on what we draw into, we can kind of adjust from there. And so let's go ahead and lock in the armor. We can protect this lane from a late game Destroyer. And then we are looking for a way to sneak in a Professor X play somewhere. And so they play Kraven, they move their Nightcrawler over, so they get a pretty big push here. I'm wondering if they had Miles Morales as well. I'm wondering if maybe they're going to run a list that can like kind of yank our cards around into unfavorable positions. Or if they're going to do a Heimdall shift or plan to do a Heimdall shift towards the very end to push their power over into Sokovia and get an incredible amount of upside. So we're just going to go with a Sunspot for now. We're going to go with... Never mind. Okay. So they run a Juggernaut. It pushes our Sunspot over into Kunlun, which buffs up their Kraven, which is unfortunate. That is very, very unfortunate. That is not what we wanted to see happen at all. Let's go with a Calling Wing into Stark Tower. That's going to discard our Swarm. Next turn, we can do a Swarm Professor X into Stark Tower if they invest cards there. And if not, we can do a Swarm and a Professor X here to lock this one down. And we can get a pretty decent amount of upside. Okay, and so they have a Polaris, so they pull our armor over, which is also very, very unfortunate. It continues to buff up their Kraven to ungodly levels. That is now an 8-power Kraven, and they haven't even really pushed it all that hard. So where do we want to push our power? I would anticipate that they push their power into Stark Tower this turn. So I'm wondering if maybe we go with a Swarm and a Professor X here. We leave our other Swarm. Hopefully we draw into Destroyer by the last turn. If not, then we can do something like a Swarm here. But I think they probably play a lot of their power into Stark Tower this turn. Professor X is going to make sure that they can't shift these with a Heimdall. I think that's what we're going to lock in. Okay, that is not great. So they have 9 power. We now have 9 power. We push the Sokovia lane, which is really, really unfortunate. That is not what we wanted to see happen at all. And then for the final turn, they used Rock Slide. They shuffled a rock into our list. We pull the rock out. Unfortunately, I mean, we have a small chance here, right? If they do an arrow here, we win in Stark Tower. If they do an arrow here, that pulls this over. We absorb 6 energy. That puts us at 18. So I think we have a chance. Even though this is unfortunate, we don't win this one. I think we have a chance of winning the other two by a decent amount. And so they do retreat. That's not necessarily the way we want to come out with a win. We want a big, impactful win. But even with drawing our rock, we were able to get lucky enough that we had the swarm with the Professor X to make sure that we tied this one instead of lost it outright, which allowed us to get the retreat, get the 1 cube. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. Okay, is who we have up next. We do have our Yellow Jacket. We have a Hawkeye, a Sunspot, all of which got impacted by the Wakandan Embassy. So they all got +2 power. I think we just play our Hawkeye. I think we hold the rest for now. We don't want to push too much power. We don't want to necessarily give our hand away with the Yellow Jacket because we don't have a great way to utilize it just yet. Their Iceman hits our Sunspot, so it becomes a 2-cost card instead of a 1, which is not great, but it's not terrible either. We can do our Sunspot here. That's still a pretty big power push here. If we draw into our Swarm next, maybe, we can do a Yellow Jacket and a Calling Wing to make sure that we get the upside there. What a nice Inkified. I haven't done any infinite splits recently, so I haven't gotten any Inkified splits, unfortunately. But let's go with the Adam Warlock into the Wakandan Embassy lane. That should give us the win long enough to draw into 1, 2, maybe 3 additional cards. We can get through most of our list this way. And so let's go ahead and lock in the Adam Warlock. They play into Oscorp again, interestingly enough. Okay, so they play Storm. They're going to push to lock down that location instead of letting their Iceman send over into our lane. But we do get the upside of having the Adam Warlock trigger here. So what we can do we give up on this lane? I mean, we have a decent power push, but it's not great either. We could do Spider-Man into Necrotia. Next turn, we can do a Professor X to lock down the Necrotia lane. They're not going to be able to push any power there. And then all we have to do is either pass or absorb some power here to finish winning this one. We can always do something like a Calling Wing as a way to get quite a bit of upside. I think that's going to be our play path. Let's go ahead and get rid of the Yellow Jacket though, just in case we draw into our Swarm and we want to try to discard it. Most likely we won't end up discarding it, but that's fine. Hopefully they don't have a Juggernaut, because we did play... Okay, so they did Sandman. Interesting. So they probably have a way that they can go wide. We do have the lead here so far, and so we can lock down this before whatever they play here. If it was something like a White Tiger that pushes power out wide, we can lock this one down before that has a chance to trigger. We get the upside, they get the downside. So let's go with the Professor X that's going to lock down Necrotia. That's going to take away a lot of their board presence. There is the White Tiger coming in, and it's not able to go to Necrotia because we, as I said, we had initiative going into that turn. And so what do we do here? If we skip, we only have 15 power, so it feels bad. I mean, these guys have served me loyally. They have fought by my side. They've stood the test of time. Let's not destroy them. It's not worth it. So if we just passed, we would get 15. But if we play our Calling Wing, that's only 2 energy. That pushes us up to 15. We still have 4. That pushes us up to 19 instead. And so that would be a really hard lane to overcome, especially with them going wide. I would anticipate the deck having something like a Dr. Doom or an Odin to re-trigger the White Tiger, but the White Tiger doesn't have anywhere to go. The Doom doesn't have anywhere to go, and so we were able to force their hand. We probably should have snapped whenever we realized they had a wide deck, and before we dropped Professor X. I just got so excited that we had a pretty good play line here. So that's two wins, 0 losses. Let's jump into the next one. Let's try for a little bit higher cube games. All right, so next up we have Wistix. And the Icebox location ended up hitting our Yellow Jacket, unfortunately. So now it's not a 0-cost card. We may not actually run that this game anymore. So let's do our Hawkeye into the far left lane. We can follow that up with an Armor on turn 2 to trigger the Hawkeye's own reveal. On turn 3, we can always do a Green Goblin as a way to kind of help push and win the Icebox location. Nova Roma helps us draw into one of our resources, which is very, very nice to see. Let's still drop the Armor. That's what we're gonna go with and push for. If we draw into our Calling Wing next turn, we can actually drop Yellow Jacket and Calling Wing to discard our Swarm and allow ourselves a pretty big power. I promise this is recorded as of this is recorded as of the time of the playing, or the commentary is recorded live. Oh my gosh, that is 2 games in a row where I made a ridiculous call. So let's play the Yellow Jacket. We'll play the Calling Wing as well. That's going to discard our swarm. We're going to have free swarms on turn 5 to either help support our Professor X, or on turn 6 to help support our Destroyer. And so maybe if we have a big enough lead in the Bifrost, we won't need to drop our swarms, but it may also be necessary at the same time. We don't know for sure. And so, actually, I really like this playline. Do you guys see what playline I'm talking about? So with Spider-Man, we're able to do Spider-Man into the icebox. The Bifrost is going to push all of our cards to the right, but Spider-Man's own reveal will stay in the icebox location. They're not going to be able to play cards here next turn. That's going to give us a free Professor X lockdown. We have a decent power push in the Spider-Man lane, and we have a somewhat decent power push in Bifrost as well. And we don't have to worry about a Mysterio token. We don't have to worry about which one's the real one. And so we get a pretty good upside here. Cerebro is an interesting one. So is it a Cerebro 5, or I would assume it has to be a Cerebro 5, right? Very interesting. But we know one of these is a fake token or a fake Mysterio, and so that limits their play potential, their play space quite a bit. So similar to last game, we have initiative going into this turn. If we did not, we'd have to worry about them maybe pushing a card wide with something that can push power out to the side. But since we have initiative, our Professor X will lock down before they play anything. So I think we hold our swarms here. We hold on to our swarms, we see what we draw into, see kind of where we think our win condition is going to be, and then we kind of play on top of that and go from there. Let's go ahead and snap before I said let's go for some higher cube games. Let's go ahead and snap before the Professor X comes down. That should guarantee we get at least 2 cubes. If they feel like they have a power push that they can compete with us with, maybe we can still have the upside. But otherwise, ooh, so this is the real Mysterio. They end up destroying both of these cards. Interesting. And so then they have Miles Morales, which both of those are 5s. We have this one locked down. This one is a 5. I don't know. I mean, they could have us. So we don't have our Destroyer. If we did, playing Destroyer here would be huge. We know that this is a 5 power push, so it's going to be 7 total power. If they do a Mystique, that is also going to be... No, they can't do a Mystique. And so they could do 7, 14, 21 total power here. This is only going to put us to 15. That feels pretty bad. So we can beat 1 5-cost drop. So if they do a Dr. Doom, let's say they do a Dr. Doom here, that's going to be 7, 14. We can push the additional little bit here. I think we probably lose this one though. If we had Destroyer, I think we'd have a really good shot of winning the Nova Roma lane. But I think they probably drop 1 card. Oh no, they drop 2. Interesting. Well, we will see. So there's the Polaris, but it can't pull any of our cards over. Their Lizard is not going to be 5 power because we have a capped out lane. Their 7 power push from Mysterio is not going to be enough. Whew. Having those free swarms to clog up the Bifrost to allow all of our cards to remain in Nova Roma was huge. Otherwise, they would have had the additional 5 power. They would have had the additional 5 power on their Lizard. We would have had it taken out of this lane. It would have been a lot harder to lock down and win. Oh my gosh. Very good game with sticks. Very good game. That is a higher cube game. That was not an easy game, mind you, but it was a higher cube game. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. All right. So next up we have Warnox. Warknox. Next up we have Warknox. The first location is Murder World, so we want to avoid that one. We can do a Hawkeye. We can drop armor in that lane next turn. We can even drop a Psylocke if we wanted to ramp. Depending on what this location is and maybe what this last one is as well. Shadowland is not great. We might be able to get some upside from Shadowland by doing a Destroyer drop. Let's go with an armor. Let's hope that it's not Oscorp Tower. If it is, it feels pretty rough. But at the same time, they're sending us an Angela if it is, which is pretty nice in its own regard. And so, okay, nope, it's Sewer System, which is -1 power to each of our cards. Okay, so we can ramp up into a 5-cost drop next turn. I think we do our Psylocke into Shadowland. I don't necessarily think we push any more into Sewer System right now. They do a Debris, which helps clog up Shadowland. It gets destroyed in Murder World, so it's not that big of a deal over there. We could do Spider-Man into one of these lanes to try to make sure that we locked it down. Let's do that. That's going to be a little bit safer. We can do Spider-Man into Murder World. We can see what they end up dropping. They're going to have initiative though, which is the scary part. They have Khazar, which buffs up their 1-cost cards. They're not going to be able to play here as long as they don't have something that pushes power out wide, so like another debris. Then we should be fine dropping the Professor X play. They could move their Nightcrawler over, which is going to push them to 7 power over here. Is that what we think they do? Do they do that? Is there a world where they do that? I'm a little bit afraid of that order of events, so I'm actually going to drop our Yellow Jacket, which will allow us to have 1 additional power here. So we're going to have a total of 7. Okay, so they didn't move their Nightcrawler, good. They did use a Squirrel Girl though, which pushes power to the left and the right. It is a 1 power card though, and so if they had something like a Blue Marvel, that could be really, really detrimental for us. But they're not going to be able to have any space to drop it because of the Squirrel Girl, because of the Ant-Man. They don't have any more spaces to play. All we have to do is push 6 power into the Shadowland, which we can't do. They don't know that though. Let's go ahead and snap, see if they take the bait. If not, then we gambled away 3 extra cubes. Worknock, I would have made the exact same call. I would have retreated there as well. But if you watch this back, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That was an outright bluff. We didn't have our big power push. But anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the next one. See if we can keep the win streak alive. All right, so next up we have Chaos. And this should be fun. I always enjoy a good chaotic game. So we're going to drop our Sunspot into the far right. If that turns out to be Oscorp Tower, feels pretty bad. Dark Dimension is interesting. Let's go ahead and play our Adam Warlock into the Sunspot lane. That if they play there this turn, maybe we don't get the upside of having a draw. If they play into Dark Dimension instead, then we at least get 1 trigger from Adam Warlock, and then maybe we can cheese out 1 or 2 others. Nope, they play a Black Widow, so we just end up pushing in this lane, unfortunately. And it does turn out to be Oscorp Tower. So that is an interesting turn of events. We can end up capping out this location. It's not great because we do send them at least 4 power and a pretty good card in Sunspot. But all things considered, if they don't change this location, they're not going to be able to push an incredible amount of power into this lane. We will get the trigger from Adam Warlock this 1 turn, and then we're going to send it their way, at which point we need to try to find a way to make sure that we get the upside and take this one back. Oh my gosh. So we can do a Yellow Jacket into a Professor X. We have all of the cards that we need here. I think we do a Yellow Jacket into a Spider-Man. Let's go ahead and snap. A Yellow Jacket into a Spider-Man, that's going to shuffle a lot of rocks into our deck. We're not worried about drawing any more of our resources. We have everything that we need right here in hand. So that will guarantee that we can lock down the Gia unless they for some reason play over there, which I don't anticipate them playing over there until they absolutely have to. I would expect them to play in the Dark Dimension, but it looks like I was wrong. We're going to be able to overcome the debris nonetheless, but just very interesting. I wasn't anticipating the debris play. We're starting to see a lot more, I guess, junk deck lists with the rise of Oscorp Tower. And so let's go ahead and lock down the Lechu Gia. We do have a massive 16 power push with our Destroyer. If they end up sending us something like a Hobgoblin, a Green Goblin, Destroyer should destroy it, allowing us to swing that lane and win the game. It just depending on how much power they drop this turn and how big Sunspot gets. I probably want to drop Destroyer in mid, but we don't know that for sure. And so let's go ahead and lock down the Gia with our Professor X. Let's see what they drop. So it looks like it only gained 1 power, so we should be fine, right? So let's say that they skip this turn. They absorb 6 energy. That is going to end up being 13. That'll be 13 energy. We beat them with a Destroyer in the far right lane. We let them do whatever they want in mid and call it quality. They can't do a Shang-Chi against us. They can't really do much of anything. And so let's go ahead and lock in the destroyer play. That should be our win condition. I don't think we have anything to worry about honestly. And so our left lane is fine. Our far right lane should be fine. Ooh. That's not going to double. That could have been. That was a surprising hazmat that almost made us lose the Gia. Was not anticipating it. Had it been able to trigger twice somehow, so had they had the hazmat and Odin, they would have won. I think they would have won at that point. So our destroyer, they used a leader, but they didn't have space over here. Thankfully, we sent them all kinds of junk in that direction. So they weren't able to get the upside of having the leader copy whatever we played. Had we played our destroyer here, it actually would have wiped out their board. And then it would have been us winning this lane, us tying this lane, and then tying the far right lane as well. It would have been very interesting to see the leader copy the destroyer. But nonetheless, we do take in the win. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. Hey, so next up we have Avo category. And Avo is a new viewer of the channel. They popped in recently on one of our videos and said, hey, I just found your channel and realized that we had matched up against each other. And so welcome Avo category. I hope that we have a good game here. And so if you have made it this far, we are currently at 3,558 subscribers as of the time of recording this video. If you're enjoying the content, please consider, and you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel reach a wider audience, and it helps that number go up. We're getting ever so close to our 4,000, our next major milestone of 4,000, and then the one after that would be 5,000, which is going to be phenomenal. And so we start off by playing Hawkeye into the far right. We can follow that up with an Adam Warlock. If they don't play something there this turn, then that will allow us to at least get one trigger with it. We do have our Calling Wing and our Swarm, so we can start working on setting up a Swarm discard so that we have the free Swarms to dump onto the board. And so let's go ahead and lock in the Adam Warlock. That gives us the lead in that far right lane. Their Lizard in Danger Room locks that one down for now. But we do have an armor play. We can kind of play around that location. Oh my gosh. All right. So that is definitely something. All right. That is absolutely something. So the last location turns out to be the very rare bar with no name. And so we lose that location. We have no way to change it. I mean, at the end of the game, if we drop a destroyer, we can actually push and tie that location. So if they're counting on it being a win, maybe not so much. And so what we're going to do is drop our armor and our sunspot into the danger room. That's going to allow us to get closer to capping this one out to reduce the power of their lizard. Next turn, we can do something like a Calling Wing and then whatever else we draw into. So like a Calling Wing, or maybe just Calling Wing, which will discard our Swarm, and then we can drop it alongside a Professor X on turn 5. Hopefully we draw into a destroyer by the end of the game. That's going to be really, really big. Oh, so it looks like they're running Cerebro 5. That list is the list has come around. I know that Jeff covered it recently, but I didn't know that it would pop off like it has, at least so far. So let's play the Calling Wing into the armored lane. Next turn, maybe we go with we're gonna go ahead and snap back. Next turn we can go with a Swarm Professor X. If we draw into Destroyer, that'll be perfect. If not, then maybe we look at potentially holding some of our power or maneuvering it in a certain way. But that is the tentative play line anyways. Ooh, so they do have the Mystique. That means all of their 5-cost cards are now going to be 9-cost cards. And while we're waiting for this one to resolve, we do have a new channel member that joined outside of our live stream, and so that's pretty rare, but very, very much appreciated. We have LaFondison, who joined us as a channel member. Thank you so much, LaFondison, for the support and joining the channel. And so here they have Cerebro. We know that all of their cards are going to be 9 power. I think what we do, it doesn't feel great, honestly, but I think we play a Professor X into the Danger Room. We have the Sunspot that can absorb some additional energy. If they don't play anything else here, our locking this lane down is going to stop their Lizard from having that upside. Ooh, they may potentially do like a Polaris this turn, which is 5 power. It would yank one of our 1 or 2 cost cards out of this location and actually destroy it in the Fisk Tower. Oh, I hope that they don't play that this turn. If I was them, I would. Oh, so no, it's a blue marvel. Thank goodness. Polaris would have been really, really bad because it would have yanked one of these out. We would have locked it down with Professor X. We wouldn't have been able to guarantee the win here. Now, right now they have Cerebro 3. So let's go with, oh my, this is huge. We drew into Destroyer right at the right time. Avo, I'm very, very sorry, but we're going to drop our Destroyer and our 2 Swarms. I think that should be enough. No matter what you end up pushing, we will tie in the bar with no name. We should win Danger Room, and I think this will be enough to win in Fisk Tower as well. And so let's watch it resolve. I think we have a really good shot of winning here. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We got very, very lucky with the top deck right at the end, but otherwise, very, very good game, Avo. And I hope to see you in the comment section. But with that win, with that big 8-cube win, that could have went either way. We got very, very fortunate at the very last turn of that. But with that win, we are going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave it a like and a comment down below. We are getting so very close to the global launch, so make sure to join me on October 18th for an extended live stream. We will be live pretty much all day. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.